Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Bob Stark, President of Stearns Bank Equipment Finance. Thanks for joining me, Bob.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jesse, and really glad to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
No, it's glad to have you on the program. Glad our paths kind of crossed a couple weeks ago up in Minnesota. I've seen your name throughout my years in equipment finance, but finally had the opportunity to meet you in person. So glad to have you on the program and talk more about the career of Bob Stark.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here. Again, looking forward to our conversation.
So Bob, for those people who haven't met you yet, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and your career to date in equipment finance?
Yeah, so without getting into the weeds too much, again, my name is Bob Stark. I'm currently the president of Stearns Bank Equipment Finance. Been here, I think it's month 5 at this point in time, but my history goes back probably 35 years in banking, with 33 of those years being specifically in equipment finance. So I'm going to really age myself in a second here, but in that 35 years, it's really been a variety of different leadership roles, right? And that's helped me throughout my career. So started out in kind of a more of a portfolio management role within equipment finance, moved into different operation leadership roles, credit leadership roles, was a chief credit officer at one point in time, in sales leadership roles, and then did a lot of mergers and acquisitions type leadership role, doing due diligence, leading large diligence teams, looking at in excess of $1 billion of either portfolios or platforms to acquire. And most of that was when I was at TCF. But I'm going to date myself here. If I go way back 35 years ago, nobody really goes to school and say, I'm going to go into equipment finance. So it's always interesting to me as to how people get into this industry, right? And
Sure.
then when they get in, they usually stay, as you know. So my story is a little unique from that perspective in that if I go way back 35 years ago, I started out at Norwest, which is now Wells Fargo Bank. But back then, it was Norwest, and I was a corporate banking auditor. So that's how I got my career in banking started, but went around and audited different corporate banking functions of Norwest at the time. And one big one was their equipment finance division. So got really intrigued in equipment finance, got to know the people there, thought that was a unique scenario where it's not really a bank division, right? They're different. They're not really a banker. These people in equipment finance are a little bit different, and it's kind of intrigued me. And so one thing led to another, and I moved into equipment finance after 2, 3 years as an auditor. And in that role, first at Norwest, I was more in the portfolio management role. So actually managed collections and workouts and repos and remarketing, all of that. So I learned what a bad deal was, right? And so that helped throughout my career when I did that. Then after I did that for a while at Norwest, I moved into a credit analyst role. So again, used my experience in collections and workouts as I started to approve or decline transactions throughout that time frame there. Then after a short while, an executive recruiter came calling and I moved to Cargill Leasing. So I was outside the banking industry for a little bit of time there. And I was the credit manager there. We did large structured deals. And it was kind of fun because they were large deals. We could structure them in a variety of different ways. It was a little bit different than the bank transactions that I saw as a credit analyst. And so Cargill then made the decision a couple, 3 years in that they wanted to sell their leasing company for a variety of different reasons. So we put a book together, went to the market. Long story short, we sold the leasing company to First Star Bank out of Milwaukee. And that's where I became the chief credit officer there. We bought a couple of banks along the way. But then long or further down the road, I should say, is then when First Star Bank and US Bank got together and US Bank acquired First Star Bank. And so this was what, 2001 timeframe now. Had a chance to move to Portland where US Bank had their equipment finance group. Decided not to move. I've been in Minneapolis area all my life, so wanted to stay here. That's when I joined TCF Equipment Finance, and they were just in the process of starting up their equipment finance group at that point in time in about 2001. I think they started at 99. I joined a year and a half into it, and spent 23 years at TCF in a variety of different roles there as
Wow.
well, mainly in that mergers and acquisition, and in the sales management, mainly in capital markets. So keep fast forwarding 23 years or 22 years, then is when Huntington acquired TCF. Then I acquired more people as part of my capital markets group. We acquired a small ticket group at Truist at the time, and kept building up my group, and to the point we were doing about $1 billion of volume a year. Then in 2023, as everyone knows, in the banking industry kind of turned upside down and turmoil persisted where, again, capital and liquidity were king, right? You're going to hear this a lot and you've heard it a lot, right? Everybody knows the story over that time frame. And where I'm going with that is Huntington made the decision at that point in time is to scale back, retrench a little bit. Liquidity was king. If you couldn't bring in deposits, then you couldn't do transactions. And so my group was disbanded. That's when I moved in the fall of 23, or early 24, moved from Huntington to a small independent finance company called Channel Partners. I think everybody knows who they are. It was a great experience there, but it gave me more experience, not from a banking standpoint in equipment finance, but more how does an independent finance company operate differently than what a bank operates. So I learned a ton. And then again, I got a call from somebody saying, are you interested, based on your background, in moving to Stearns Bank as their president of their equipment finance? And of course, did a lot of due diligence on that. One thing led to another. And then last September is when I moved to Stearns Bank to become the president of their equipment finance group. So that's my long-winded story of kind of how I got into equipment finance and where I am today. I will say I've had a ton of fantastic and key mentors along the way in all of those different entities that I was at. And they shaped my outlook really on how I approach different things, and really the leadership skills that I have, and then the technical skills in all of those different functional areas that I utilize today, whether it be credit, whether it be operations, portfolio management, sales, all of those I oversee right now. So all of that experience was paramount to being able to at least bring some value to Stearns Bank Equipment Finance today. But yeah, I had a lot of leadership mentors along the way, teaching you, how to welcome change, right? Become vulnerable, right? And vulnerability was always used as a weakness, but people, taught me how to use that as a strength moving forward, and then listen to people, right? And then away you go from that standpoint. So I utilize a lot of those skills today, and it's been helpful from that standpoint.
Perfect, Bob. Thank you for that background. And that's quite a little 30-year, just 30 years, right? It's a 30-year
Just
wrap
goes like
up.
that though, right?
Just goes like that. No, but yeah, I mean, I learned a lot there, and there's a lot to unpack. I mean, the fact that you started off in collections and workouts, it allows you to
Long
see,
time
okay,
ago, but yeah,
this this is what you don't want to do.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. It all
And
brought a
then
certain experience to the table, right?
sure, sure. And then going from credit to sales, capital markets. I mean, so I think is there anything you haven't done for an equipment finance organization? I didn't really hear any accounting like stuff in there.
Oh yeah, customer
Uh,
service, accounting, all those different types of functions. Yeah, I have to rely on other people for those skill sets, right? I don't have them.
I can spell accounting. It's good enough
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me.
exactly. It wasn't my forte.
Do you mind just kind of introducing Stearns Bank?
Yeah, so again, like I said, I got a call and it intrigued me. It is a local bank here in the Midwest, obviously just outside of the Twin Cities, and so um, it's been nothing but a great experience over the last 5 months for me. The executive team, on which I'm a part of at Stearns, has been nothing but supportive from this day one over the last 5 months. So their equipment finance group is actually their largest operating or business unit. It's the largest, the highest yielding, and the longest term operating unit that they do have. And so this wasn't something, and I keep telling my leadership team this wasn't something that I took over underperforming team, right? This was a performing team with a lot of experienced individuals that I utilize their experience every single day. And so our goal here at Stearns really is to lift up equipment finance, right? Lift up equipment finance, Stearns Bank equipment finance in the industry. And I use this term a lot, but it's still appropriate where Stearns, I knew, having been at all these conferences throughout the year, whatever ELFA conference it was, but I didn't know Stearns Bank was even in attendance at some of those conferences. And so what we're trying to do is lift that up, right? You're going to see a lot of marketing around Stearns Bank Equipment Finance as we move through the next year. And the whole effort is to wake the sleeping giant. So they've always been kind of a sleeping giant. They've always been operating under the radar. And they've always been very successful, though, in doing that. And that's the approach that they've taken. So our portfolio is not a small portfolio. It's about $1 billion in size. We have about 175 people just in the equipment finance group, and we're doing probably in excess of 500 million in originations each year. So that kind of those things, surprised me a little bit from that standpoint as I started to dig into this opportunity. And I kept saying, there's a ton of opportunity here to utilize my skill sets, to utilize my experience, and hopefully add some value to Stearns Bank in growing their equipment finance. It has grown in the last year, but we want to grow it a little bit faster from that standpoint. So it's a well-capitalized bank. They are looking to grow equipment finance, where some banks, as you know, are retrenching in their equipment finance groups, and we'll talk a little bit about that coming up. But that is different than we are actually an ESOP. So it's an employee-owned bank to some extent, and so it's unique from that standpoint. And our goal is to enhance it, equipment finance, to grow it and propel it nationally is really what we're trying to do. And that is the opportunity. There's internal opportunity to change processes, to change our go-to-market strategies where it is necessary, and we're just not making change to make change. But those are the internal opportunities that I see when I came aboard, and there are external opportunities based on what's going on in the market today. But Stearns has been nothing but supportive of what I wanted to do in making changes and then keeping certain things the way they are. So it's been a great experience.
Perfect. Yeah, I want to say Stearns was probably the third client I ever had in equipment finance back in 2006.
I remember you telling me that the other night. That's
Uh,
amazing.
uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean it's and you guys are headquartered in Albany. This, I mean, the equipment finance is in Albany, but you guys are doing this volume basically pretty much in a hybrid or remote
Well,
setting,
yeah,
right?
we're actually all remote, which is a little bit unique as well. So two things there, right? We do have, as you mentioned, the large, really large office for equipment finance in Albany, that could probably house 200 plus people, but we utilize that as a benefit, right? We can go into that office. It's not far for me. It's not far for a lot of my team to go in there. So when we want to do strategic meetings face to face, or what have you, we can go into the office and utilize that facility. But it also brings us the benefit or the ability to hire the best talent around the country, right? As we lift up Stearns Bank Equipment Finance, and we've hired 5 or so people already, one of the opportunities and benefits there of being fully remote, there's challenges to it as well. No, don't get me wrong, but one of the benefits is we've been able to hire people in Chicago and in other cities as we try to lift up Stearns Bank Equipment Finance as well. So it's a unique strategy from that standpoint. But coming out of COVID, they did a ton of conversations with the entire employee base of Stearns Bank, a lot of surveys and a lot of opinions, and came to the conclusion that they care about their employees, and it shows in saying they wanted to continue to work from home. It is an ESOP, as I mentioned, and so there's a lot of thought process around, is your people is your biggest asset, how do we treat them? And that's how they came to that conclusion. It's working. It has been working. Does it provide challenges? Absolutely it does. But Zoom and Teams and our ability to go in a short notice to go into the office in Albany and meet in person has all worked. And so hopefully, we anticipate that will continue to work as we lift this up.
Yeah, I was just it's one of the, you wouldn't anticipate that nice of an office as you're making that turn around the corner up there on Albany. I forgot the name of the street, but
You're
like
absolutely right. The first time I went there, I'm like, is this the place, right? Is this just for equipment finance? And then I walked inside and I thought I saw the whole thing. And I'm like, this place is huge. It's really, really nice. And it's huge, but they didn't have even the third part in the very back open. So I walked back there and there's another third of it behind that. And I'm like, wow, this is a nice office and it's a nice place. And we utilized it as much as we can. So it's still something that benefits us, and it is a huge place.
perfect. And thank you for the background there in Stearns. I've had the pleasure of knowing Kelly, I want to say probably for the last 15 years. Even met Norm, back
Oh,
in the
yeah,
day.
I didn't get the
So
pleasure to do that, unfortunately, but
yeah, it's a great organization, Bob, and I'm glad to glad you're in the position that you're in there. And saw Adrian a few months ago. You'll be able to bring him on board, so it's another
yeah, that was one
great
of the big
asset to the
hires,
team.
right, that I mentioned just previously, again, is to bring Adrian Heben aboard as our national sales manager. He has a lot of experience in equipment finance for almost the same number of years as I have. And so it's been a tremendous asset bringing him aboard. And then we've been able to bring another vertical sales manager aboard here recently. And we're looking to hire a second vertical sales manager in the near future here as we work through that process as well. And so a lot going on, right? But again, there's a lot of opportunity out there within Stearns Bank Equipment Finance and enhancing our processes, our go-to-market strategy. And that's the first thing that we did is we really looked at our go-to-market strategy and we changed and made changes to that. We did a reorg from that standpoint, very diligent about it, very transparent about what we did and how we did it and why we did it. And so far, it seems to have, knock on wood, it seems to have working. It seems to be working where, our origination numbers are up. We're on pace to hit our goal in February like we did in January. So things are looking good from there. And now it's a matter, like everyone does, right? Is how do you enhance your processes even further? Where can you bring in efficiencies and where can you bring in technology to create some of those efficiencies as well? So that's kind of the phase that we're in right now as we look from one function to the next and working with my leadership team, which again has a ton of experience is very helpful. So we've had the benefit of utilizing a lot of the internal people that have been there for years and their experience, as well as couple that with some outside people, myself, Adrian, and others that we've hired to try to say what is the best practice that we want to implement going forward. So it's been good from that standpoint.
Perfect. And then, when you got that phone call, saying, "Hey, would you like to run?" I mean, you were running divisions at your other organizations, anyways, but now to actually be like the main person running an entire equipment finance, like how is that? It sounds to me like it's a very servant-based approach that you're taking when you say lift up the team that you have. What was kind of that like when I guess over the last 5 months, just reflecting on it.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be a journey, right? It has been a journey in the 5 months, and it's going to continue to be a journey. It's not going to be a point in time where all of a sudden we're satisfied with where we're at, right? It's going to be a journey. It's going to be utilizing everyone's experience together and collaboratively as we move forward and make changes. But again, we're a small ticket shop, right? We're a small ticket vendor shop is really what we are, and so we are trying to be niche players, making sure that everyone is focused in what they do. That goes back to the go-to-market strategy and the changes that we made there is to say these are the verticals that we're going to operate in. These are what you're going to operate in, solely operate in that, become experts, be very focused on what you do and the equipment that we finance, right? And so again, executive management has been very supportive of those types of changes that we're making as we move this forward. Even though they've been successful in the past, there's improvements that we can make as we lift this up from a national standpoint. So that's kind of where we're at from there. But it's been a great experience, and Stearns and the executive management team have been very supportive. Have you heard me say a couple times already? And that's
Yeah,
critical. That's critical. It really is. So
sure, sure, sure. Well, congrats on the success to date there. Excited to see kind of how the rest of 2025 plays out. But I guess
yeah,
that's a good segue into kind of the current state of the market. When I was up there a couple weeks ago, I think I met with 5 different banks. Um, Complete opposite of what it was last year, the same
yeah.
time, where it was like, no, no, we're just kind of holding still. Hopefully, we can do something. There's only one of those this time, and the other four were very more optimistic in
Hmm.
regards to, no, we're starting to see some of this stuff turn. Obviously, we're not going to blow the doors off this thing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And again, when I looked at this opportunity, I saw opportunity is really what it was, right? So I've been at a big bank in them before. You heard me say it before, and they were retrenching, especially in their vendor um, approach from their equipment finance unit. So they were retrenching. So there's opportunity based on those customers and those vendors and those dealers that are looking for replacements from those banks that are retrenching, right? So you couple that with the independents right now that are struggling, some of them, not all of them, well-capitalized ones are doing fine, but some are struggling with their cost of funds, right? They're trying to
Sure.
figure out how they're going to fund their business going forward, and through warehouse lines, through securitizations, through private equity. All of that stuff is not cheap, right? So here we come with, a great cost of funds and still being a bank, but we're in that nice little niche where there's at least a small window right now of opportunity. Now, banks may come back in depending upon what their loan portfolio does, or if they seek to grow it going forward and what rates do, and so on and so forth. And we can get into that. But there is a window of opportunity right now to start entrenching ourselves into some of those programs. And some of the programs that we're in with vendors and dealers, they're tier 3, tier 2 type programs, but we can lift that up as well as we maybe get entrenched in some of the larger programs that are out there, depending upon what vertical we're talking about. But
Yeah, it'll be
it all
interesting to
goes back to
see.
that external opportunity that sits in the marketplace today based on the dynamics.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see. It's not a if, it's a when. The banks, the bigger banks. What do you mean we don't? What do you mean we're not doing that? What do you mean we're not putting?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, capital was king, right? Capital and liquidity. And it's remained that way for what, a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. And at some point that'll change again, right? Then the deposits won't be, they're always going to be important, but they're not going to be as critical, that liquidity. So, um, there will be a change. Banks will come back at some point in time. We've all seen it. We've been through these cycles before. And so it's a matter of, some are going to stay the course and stay in it. Some are going to pull back a little bit and come back in it, and you're going to see a variety of those types of things. But from my perspective, from a strategic standpoint, and where Stearns sits today, there are a lot of opportunity in the market for us to lift up Stearns Bank. And so, ironically, the whole bank, Stearns Bank, is going through a whole rebranding right now as well. And so it fits from a timing standpoint for us because we're going through a rebranding with the bank. And so you're going to see us, in that rebranding effort, be more prevalent in the market, whether it be through advertising, whether it be through doing things like this, whether it be um, through our trade show presence, our conference presence, all those types of things is all geared from a strategic standpoint to take us to that next level.
Excellent. Um, well, and plus, even if the bigger banks eventually do get back in, they're not going to be as nimble or as
Hmm.
efficient as
Hmm.
some of the regional banks will be. So,
Yep.
reality of it. So thank you, Bob, for that. Want to talk about just kind of the, the equipment leasing and finance industry, and kind of what the industry has meant to you over your career, and just kind of wanted to get your thoughts there, because one of the things I like to get when people watch these are little tips and tricks on what has worked well for you in your career, and how can people maybe apply some portion of what you found to be your formula for success.
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question, right? We can go in a lot of different directions, but it's still a good question. We have the wherewithal. We're in an industry that has a lot of support, right? Through ELFA and other, whether it's ELFA, NIFA, you can go on and on, right? And so there's a lot of trade organizations or organizations that support this industry. And so that's been critical. Obviously, I've been to almost all of those conferences, right? Whether it be the funding conference in Chicago, where you're doing speed dating, whether it be the annual conference that they move around, which has turned into kind of a funding conference #2, whether it be even the credit and collections conference or the equipment management conference. I can even remember way, way back in the day when they still have it, is the ELFA Principles of Leasing, it was called then. Now they call it Principles of Leasing and Finance, I think. But I remember as I first got in, going to that as well and say, what's this leasing thing all about? So there's a lot of support in the industry, right? You can learn a lot of things through that, but you can also do a ton of networking, right? So having been at all of those conferences, you meet a ton of people and you learn not only best practices, but you develop relationships, right? And those relationships, as you know, and as everybody knows, are critical as you move forward in your career, because you're going to bank on those relationships or rely on them from a variety of different standpoints, right? Whether you want to try to do business with them, or whether you want to try to just call them up and ask, hey, what are your thoughts on this, or network from that standpoint. There's a lot of value around that. And there's the first thing that comes to mind when you say, again, you heard me say, how do people get into equipment finance? They don't go to school for this. But once they're in, they see those organizations, they see that network that they can build, they see all the benefits around that. I think that's why they stay in the industry, right? And it's critical from that standpoint to be involved from those. Now, I shouldn't say this, but I've never been on a board for any of them or anything like that, but I attend those conferences all the time, and have built all kinds of relationships with a ton of people, and it's been fantastic.
Bob, I want to circle back to something you mentioned at the beginning, and that was kind of some mentors that you had throughout your career, and it kind of helped shape you or guided you, to be the professional that you are today. So from a equipment finance industry, as you mentioned, once we get in, you don't really get out, right? I've been
Hmm.
someone's tried to pull me out once. It wasn't hard for me just to kind of, but
It's
from the
amazing how that
industry,
works. Yeah.
it's just it's just a
You
good
can't explain
group
it.
of a good group of people that
Hmm.
it's uh, I don't know. I'm
That's really what it
biased.
comes back to, right? It's a great group of people. It's a small world, right? I don't know how many times I've said that. That somebody knows somebody that knows somebody, and wow, it's a small world, but it's the world we live in equipment finance. So,
That and it's you might lose a deal to one of your competitors, and you sit there and it's like, yeah, I'll get you next time, but it's not like you're
mhm.
angry over it. It's just kind of like, I see what you did there.
Yeah, it's really it's the trust that you build up with all the people that you meet and the relationships that you encounter and start, and then you start to trust everybody. And obviously, our business is built around relationships and trust. So that kind of stuff is key. And that's what you talked about, mentors and things like that. That's what was instilled in me, really early on, right? I wasn't one that would say, oh, I want to go to all these conferences, but was encouraged to go to start networking, to start learning and building those relationships because they come in. Um, Such benefit later on and during your career as you go through your career. And that stuff is critical. And I think, again, you've heard this a lot, right? And I think ELFA does a good job at this, trying to bring in more of a youth movement, right? To bring in young people, and then we can mentor them like we were mentored when I was younger. And that's what we're trying to do here a little bit as well. As you heard me talk about, the team that I have, the leadership team that I have is very experienced. Um, and the people that we're bringing in has experience, but we also have to bring in, and we're in the process of that, are some young people that are more hungry and want to learn more about equipment finance. It not only helps our industry, it'll help me and Stearns Bank as well. So it's a win-win from that standpoint. So it's that mix that we try to look for. But when you're hiring somebody in equipment finance, you try to gotta take a little bit of time saying, well, what really is that, right? And so pulling out all the benefits and the mysteries of what that is and getting people intrigued about it is fun to do as well.
Well, and I would say it's a little trickier these days. It's not like you can just hire probably somebody, throw them in a similar situation you threw yourself into when you first started, because people are like, elections workout. I don't want to do
Yeah.
this. It
Yeah.
sounds like it's a crisis. I don't want to work on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me the fun stuff.
Yep. Exactly.
So I guess while we're talking about like hiring kind of the next generation workforce, what are you guys doing to kind of change the old guard, I guess, for lack of better terms,
Just that,
recruit
right? So
talent?
that, again, it goes back to what's going on in our market. There's a lot of things going on where there's still acquisitions that are happening, right? And when those acquisitions happen, people get displaced. And so we're not only looking for experienced people when that happens, we're looking for the younger person that's interested in, they're hungry, they're interested in learning about equipment finance, or interested in having somebody be their mentor and start a career path. So we try to weigh that out as we go through this and get a good mix of people. And that's really it sounds basic, but it's really what you need to do. You can't just continue to rely on all the experience. You get this young movement in here, they have different ideas. And so there's a benefit in doing that. So we are trying to do it. We've just been successful in our first younger person that we've hired, and it was a result of acquisition that occurred, and so there was an opportunity, and we were very optimistic and opportunistic around making that transition for that person into equipment finance.
Perfect. Perfect. And time will tell how more of those things present themselves, and it'll be good. Be good.
Yeah.
It's all about kind of how are we going to leave this you know industry after
Yeah,
our
you're
time.
right. It's fun, right? It's fun to be the on the flip side of that, the mentor versus the other side of that. When we were young and people were mentoring us, now it's fun to kind of return the favor, if you will.
Yes, sir. Bob, I ask everyone who comes on this program to give me a little fun fact about themselves. So, what makes you tick outside of work and equipment finance?
Well, people are gonna watch this that know me for the last 30, 35 years. The first thing they're gonna say is he's very competitive, right? And so I always want to win, right? And so I learned along my career that can be a positive, but it can also be a negative, right? You can't take
Yeah.
it too far. And so I grew up playing all kinds of different sports, and that's what kind of drew that competitiveness out in me, number one. But number two, and this is kind of funny, is I am a twin. So I have a twin sister, so that competitiveness came out and saying, I want the last pizza, or I want to have the car tonight. You know, you're competing with somebody right there that's right with you for those types of things. And so between it's kind of funny between playing the sports and that growing up, and sharing a lot of different things, that is kind of the uniqueness when people um, talk about me if you go way back. But in addition to that, I guess I would answer that question by saying I like to do a variety of different things, right? Um, Going to work and building this up is really, really fun, but you also got to have other interests. And so I try to have a lot of other interests. So I do a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing. Yes, I'm in Minnesota. I do ice fishing. I have sat out on the lake in very, very cold weather in
Oh,
Minnesota.
I
And
was going to say, ice fishing to me is just like glishing. You're just in a camper. It's warm.
well, yeah, you experienced it through the NIFA experience, right? Where you have those ice castles. I actually have one of those and I use that. So it's not like I'm roughing it out there either. People think of it as, hey, this guy in Minnesota sitting on a lake on a bucket in the middle of nowhere freezing his butt off. And as you know, and it's not that at all, right? It's when you live in Minnesota in the winter, you have to find things to do. Right? You can't go stir crazy inside. So I like to get out and do that. That's one of the things. And so I like to do just a variety of different things, and that's what keeps things, interesting as you move forward in your career as well and in your life.
So, twin sister, from a career perspective, do you guys still compete with each other? Like
No,
on no, no, okay,
no, no. She took a completely different career path into more of a
okay,
HR role from that
okay.
standpoint. So not in finance, not in banking, those types of things, which I probably is good, right? Otherwise, we'd still be competing from that standpoint. So it's probably good that we've ventured off in our own ways. But I always remind her that I'm 10 minutes older than she is, so I'll never
I was
let
gonna
her.
ask. I was gonna ask who was born first. So
Yeah, it was
okay,
me. See, that's the competitiveness again, right there. So,
fantastic. Bob, my final question I have for you, sir, is why should someone want to do business with Bob Stark and Stearns Bank Equipment Finance?
so yeah, again, there's a lot of things happening at Stearns as we try to lift this up, but the one thing that kind of sticks out to me again is we're big enough to matter, right? It's the old saying, we're big enough to matter, but we're small enough to truly care. And that is who we are, right? And one other thing that astounded me when I got here, because we've all been in a situation where we're trying to call our bank and we call up the customer service number, we sit on hold for 15, 20 minutes. Then after hitting 16 buttons, you might get a live body and they might be somebody who can help you, somebody who can't. The one thing Stearns prides themselves on, and I've witnessed this myself, is we answer on the first ring. All right.
Yep.
And by that, they mean that. So we have a whole staff in Albany that answers the customer service lines on the first ring. It's a live body, and you get somebody to talk to that can help you and put you in the right direction. That is unusual in our industry, and we promote that every single day. So we have that small bank mentality. We have that customer service mentality from we answer on the first ring type scenario. And it's astounding because well, I won't do it right now, but if I call that number right now, I will guarantee you somebody will answer that phone and say, "How can I help you?" And that to me is phenomenal. You don't, I've been in this banking industry, like we said, for 35 years and never ever seen that. 35 years ago, maybe you saw it, but there's no way in today's world that you come across that in that manner. So that's pretty cool from that perspective. But we also have, really fast turnaround time in our credit team. We have a lot of credit people and we turn credits really fast within 2 to 3 hours is our goal. And that's, again, in our business with a flow business is critical, but we can beat our competition from that standpoint. Comes down to, again, collaboration and personal. All the people in those verticals are talking to our vendors, our dealers on a day-to-day personal basis, building that trust, building that relationship. Those are critical into what we do from that standpoint. So those, and again, we talked about this, and this isn't what we lead with, but we have good rates, right? We're a bank. We have good cost of funds compared to an independent. And again, compared to some of the larger banks that are retrenching, there's opportunity from that standpoint. We're looking to grow. Some banks are not. And then we can compete from a rate standpoint against an independent finance company as well. So those are really the critical things is how do we go to market? We want to become experts. So all of our people are experts when they're talking to those dealers and to those vendors, they can talk shop with them, so to speak. They know what that equipment can do and the intricacies and the specs of that equipment versus they get a general person on the phone and they'll see right through that right away. So that's kind of how we're strategically setting ourselves apart from those, 4 or 5 different attributes.
Perfect. Thank you and well said. I mean, this is my 20th year in equipment finance. There's only been 2 shops that I think I've been in or go by the same adage there where the phone's not going to ring twice. That's yours and then Great America.
Oh yeah,
Always
you're
like
right.
that shop
Yep.
better not, the phone better not, your phone ring more than twice
Yeah.
once.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's been there. It's so frustrating, whether it's your cable company or whether your
It's
bank,
so
where you're hitting
annoying.
10 buttons to just talk to a body, or worse yet, you get just right back to where you started from and you've never talked to anybody and you've been on the
So
phone for 20 minutes. So
yeah, it's like it's such a pain.
it's the world we live in for the most part. Why that's so unique here, and it's stuck out to me. And I had to make sure we made mention of it because it's such a benefit for our customers to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, I really appreciate your time today. It's nice to hear more about your career, learn more about how you got to where you are today. Excited for, to see what the next 5 months plus 5 years bring for you at Stearns, sir.
No, I appreciate the time, Jesse. Again, it was great to meet you the other day, and glad we had the opportunity to talk here as well. Again, we're in the process of trying to lift things up here, and again, hopefully you will see more of a presence of Stearns Bank Equipment Finance in our market, and that's going to be our goal going forward. So, I appreciate the time today.
Awesome, sir. We'll talk soon. Thanks again,
All
Bob.
right, thank you.
Thank you.